Blacks in Technology.
Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology.
Welcome, everybody, to another exciting broadcast of the Bit Tech Talk podcast, a.k.a. the Blacks in Technology podcast. This is the University Edition. I mentioned last podcast that we will be doing the Founders Edition tonight, but I misspoke. I apologize. This episode, that episode will actually be live next Thursday on the 19th. We will have our Founders podcast next Thursday on the 19th of December. We'll have more details on our site about that, and we'll definitely tweet that out to everybody about the times for that podcast. So I'm your host tonight, Greg Greenlee, along with my co-host, Yori, and we also have Jewel Sparks as a co-host tonight. And in case this is your first time tuning in to the podcast, I'm the founder of Blacks in Technology. We're an organization with an established online community of close to 1,100 members nationwide. I've also worked as a systems engineer, over 12 years experience in the IT field. And today I participated in NPR's The Day in the Life Blacks in Tech campaign. So I want to thank everybody for all the questions that were posed, all the followers, new followers that we gained, and support from everybody. It was definitely a fun event. Definitely like participating. Also want to announce that we just launched an IRC channel on freenode.net for all the techies out there. That's Internet Relay Chat. We have a channel now under the hashtag BitTechChat. So definitely come join us there. There's going to be a lot of great tech conversations going on there. You can check us out by visiting us at www.blacksintechnology.net. That is our online community. Join. It's free. Like I said before, our membership is closing in on 1,100 members nationwide, even some overseas. Engage in the community. We have a ton of knowledgeable people, experienced individuals. It's definitely a great place to learn about technology, lots of great tech conversations. We have podcasts, and we're continuing to grow. So come help grow the community, spread the word. Engaging and contributing is definitely key. In case you're joining us for the very first time, I want to give you a little bit of background on Blacks Technology. We're founded about 4 years ago as a way to build a sense of community among Black techs and engineers and people looking to learn, share knowledge about the world of technology. It's a way for the community to build and learn from each other. We have experts across all domains of technology, from mechanical engineers, network engineers, sysadmins, you name it. We have someone from that discipline as a member of our site. And we're looking for people to engage and contribute to the community, no matter what your skill level or expertise is, because this is about building community and helping one another succeed in our careers. Our main goal at Blacks in Technology is to stomp the divide, and we're accomplishing that by focusing on increasing visibility, increasing participation, and changing the perceptions of African Americans in the technology field. Like I said, you can check us out, blacksintechnology.net. We also have a technology blog written entirely by African-American techs and engineers, and that's bitdigest.net. You can follow us on Twitter at Black in Technology. That's BLKINTECHNOLOGY, and also at BitTechDigest. We have a LinkedIn group, Facebook, www.facebook.com/Blacks in Technology. And we are one episode away from reaching our 50th podcast. That's monumental. That's great. We continue to move forward. This is our 49th episode, and with that, I want to hand this off to my incredible co-host, Yuri Selassie. She's going to tell us about tonight's podcast.
Awesome. So I definitely don't want to waste any time today because we've got so many really amazing guests on. So I'm going to just go ahead and jump right on into our introduction. So we're really talking about this topic around the university education, higher education, and how it contributes to innovation. And so to allow us to do this today, we've got Mike Green on the line. Mike Green is the co-founder of the America 21 Project, and he manages the communication and brand organization at blackinnovation.org and assists in establishing national economic vision around economic inclusion. Pop right on in and say hi, Mike.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
very happy to have you. And then we also have Kai Dupuy. Kai is a software developer, an educator, and he's been doing this for somewhere around 25 years or so, and he has a master's degree in education, and he's currently working on his doctorate at Pepperdine. He's a consultant, a trainer, a speaker, and he's got 2 lovely kids. Thank you for joining us today, Kai.
You're welcome. Good to be here.
And also joining us from my area of the hood is Umoju Miller. Umoju is a PhD student at UC Berkeley. She's a lead researcher on a project called Hip-Hopathy at UC Berkeley, which is sort of playing in the intersection of hip-hop, artificial intelligence, and human cognition. And she's using reasoning, looking into the reasoning and concepts around hip-hop music. So, and also, Umoju is an advisor to the White House Presidential Innovation Fellowship Project, and she really focuses on tech inclusion, diversity, and things of that nature. So thank you for joining us, Umoju.
Thank you for having me.
And also joining us is Dr. Maya Beasley. Maya is joining us from Washington, D.C. She's an associate professor in the Department of Sociology at the University of Connecticut. She serves on the board of advisors for the Institute of African American Studies. She has a BA in sociology from Harvard, an MA, and a PhD in sociology from Stanford. And she's written a book called Opting Out, Why America is Losing Out on Its Young Black Elite, which was published in November 2011. Thank you for joining us, Maya.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And last but not least is Dr. Reggie Farrell. Dr. Reggie Farrell is also one of the people who have been profiled in the NPR Blacks in Tech campaign that's been going on from December 2nd to the December 20th. And he's a research professor of physics at the New Jersey Institute of Technology. He studies nanotechnology and biophysics in order to understand how cells communicate internally with other cells. He's done some really amazing things, and so we're really happy to have him on here today to talk about some of his research and how that relates to higher education and innovation. Thanks for joining us, Reggie.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Take it away, Greg.
Thank you, Ayori. I definitely want to thank each and every one of our guests for joining us here tonight. This is going to be a fantastic podcast. But without further ado, I want to jump right into the questions so we can hear from all of our guests tonight. So I want to start with you, Mike. You talk a lot about the innovation economy. So if you wouldn't mind explaining what the innovation economy is, explain why it's important, and more importantly, explain what you're doing to ensure that people of color are participating in it.
Well, I appreciate the question. In the 19th century, America's economy was agrarian. We grew crops, and everyone knew how wealth was being generated in America. In the 20th, industrial and manufacturing economy was what drove wealth in this nation. Near the end of the 20th century, at the turn of the 21st century, and we're talking right after the death of Dr. King and right about the late 1960s, early 1970s, we had a fundamental shift in our economic framework in this country. We went from an industrial manufacturing economy to what we call today an innovation economy. It is a knowledge-based, tech-driven, globally competitive innovation ecosystem. And what I mean by that is innovation is defined as creative disruption. So what you have is technological efficiencies, so that you have more companies that will be able to create more wealth, generate more profits with fewer people. And one of the things that they're doing is they're disrupting business models across industry sectors. So when you have disruptions of markets, you have shortened life cycles of businesses. So this new innovation, this creative disruption, is creating more competition, and it's creating more and more startups across the nation. And as the Kauffman Foundation says, Since 1980, nearly all net new jobs in America were created by startups. These are companies 5 years old and less. So the net new jobs that are being created in this country are being created by startups. After the Great Recession, we saw a great dip in that. And so from President Obama all the way to Silicon Valley, everybody is concerned about creating more opportunities for entrepreneurs, more innovators. These are your creative disruptors. These are your critical thinking, problem-solving, resilient people who take these risks to start these companies and get them funded and grow in an exponential way, high-growth enterprises. That creates jobs, it creates wealth, and generational wealth and economic competitiveness. So this is the innovation economy that we have today, and because of technology, it is global. It's not just in your community. You're competing against entire markets that are all over the world. And that's daunting to a lot of folks. It's also exciting because a lot of the old infrastructure has crumbled and it has made way for new opportunities that just didn't exist for a lot of people before. And the opportunity we have today as Black folks is to get into this economic game, create wealth and create generational wealth and create jobs that we were never able to do before.
Yeah, I like that. I definitely see that opportunity for African Americans to create this new wealth with this disruptive economy. And for those who may not have heard the terms of disruption, but it's basically just talking about when a new kind of innovation or technology comes in and it really replaces what we had happening before. So, for example, if some folks may be familiar with the Uber app that allows you to book a taxi cab from your phone, that's really right now disrupting the entire taxi economy. And so we have lots of different things. You know, the tablets is a great example. It's basically going to push the whole PC market out. And so there are other areas where we can see this coming as well.
Right. And what my organization does, the America 21 Project, and you can read about us at blackinnovation.org. What my organization does is three primary things. One, we want to change the economic narrative across Black America because we don't talk about the innovation economy. We don't even know typically what our local innovation ecosystems are, nor how to access capital, nor how to access opportunity. We need to change the economic narrative. The second thing we do is we promote inclusive competitiveness. When the nation talks about its economic competitiveness, it cannot reach its economic competitiveness goals without being inclusive. So those old exclusive economic systems that were our grandparents and our parents were a part of, there's no ability for this nation to continue forward without being inclusive of the Black and brown communities that are growing at a faster rate and either are going to contribute to the economic GDP of the country, or they're going to be a drain upon it. And currently, if you take all Black and brown businesses together, we comprise less than 3.5% of GDP. That's the best we've ever done. And that is just completely and wholly insufficient. So we promote inclusive competitiveness in economic development ecosystems. And then the third thing we do is we connect economically disconnected communities to their local innovation ecosystem and opportunity. So we talk about it. So we spread the word. That's changing the narrative. We're in those economic development ecosystems, and we're promoting inclusive competitiveness, and we're actively connecting communities. Those are the three things that America 21 is doing.
That's really powerful, and that sounds like a really impactful strategy. And there are a lot of partners that are going to be available to support you in that. I want to pose a question to Dr. Reggie Farrow. As you're a research professor, you work in the heart of innovation, and I really want to hear you describe from your perspective in the university, from the standpoint of research, how does that research contribute to innovation, and how can we better, really explain this to folks who are coming into the colleges and universities, that there's a role for them, not only in the startups of the world and the large enterprise companies, but also in the world of research where these innovations are being discovered.
Well, thank you. I kind of consider myself as being at the beginning stage of what Mike was talking about, as a matter of fact. You have to ask the question, well, where do the ideas come from that create innovation? And, what I do and many researchers do at universities and in corporate research facilities is we're trying to solve problems. And in some cases, there are problems that, we all know about. They're trying to solve the problem of cancer. We're trying to solve the problems of, shrinking the size of computer chips to make this cell phone that I'm using possible. And so, from a research standpoint, in the process of doing that, you create you create intellectual property. You create things which haven't been done before that you can then market. And this is where the startup companies come from. And having been involved in this, for a while, you can see how these things branch out, from universities in a very interesting way. You find many professors who also have their own businesses and still remain professors. And, for a place like where I am at New Jersey Institute of Technology, which is an urban university, it's also a very diverse university. So the students then get a chance to get involved in that process, from the beginning. And I have students who are involved, at all levels, undergraduate, graduate students. I started, I guess, too late. I have students involved from the high school level, and then undergraduate, graduate school, and postdoctoral level, who are involved in this process and who are all contributing in this process in a very, very meaningful way, including the high school students who we generally have in the summer. It's actually a very exciting process, and there's real opportunity in this because, the types of jobs that we're going to be creating in this country are very different from the types of jobs that we had, as Mike said, that our parents and grandparents were going to be exposed to, including even in the manufacturing sector. The manufacturing sector now is very high-skilled jobs, very technical jobs, and that is because of innovation. That is because the machines that now do manufacturing are intelligent machines. They are programmed. They are not just run. They are programmed. And there are certain things that you need to know, like solid geometry, in order to understand many of the concepts that go behind being successful in running these machines. So getting back to what I do, though, at the basic research part of this, what I'm doing is I'm out there looking for problems which haven't been solved. And for me personally, I'm looking for not only problems that haven't been solved, but the most difficult problems that haven't been solved, because I think those are the most interesting. The ones that people say, well, that's really impossible. Well, those are the problems that I think we need to we need to work on. And in the process of doing that, you find innovation just in the pathway to trying to solve those problems. And it's a very, 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 very exciting.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important for folks thinking about going into college to really understand, because that's really the point where you actually get to create the innovation. That's where you get to say, no one has tried to solve this problem yet. I'm going to research this, follow this, and really create something from it. And it doesn't always work, but it's that process of experimentation that will, that's what can result in the creation of, new types of hardware, new types of software, new programming languages, all of these different types of concepts, even the stuff that, Google is based on, came out of a university research project. So, and I think, unfortunately, too frequently, African Americans aren't really aware of that, and how powerful that university education is. It's not just about going in and getting a job. You can really create something globally impactful in your research.
You know, I have to chime in on that because you never know what it is. The best example that I have in my own personal experience is that there was a math course that I had when I was an undergraduate, which I was awful at. You know, I think I might have squeaked out a D in that topic, and that was not generally what I did, but this was just terrible, right? And it turned out that the first patent that I actually was awarded was on that math topic. Okay.
Wow.
And so, you know, I apparently learned enough of it to know when I needed it. You know, and I think that the what used to be a general liberal arts education, people have tried to channel into something very specialized now. But I think that what I'm finding is the students that I have who are the most creative, the ones who work in my lab, are very, very diverse. And when I say diverse, they are diverse technically. They are diverse in their knowledge. They study many, many things besides the technical topics that we require them to study. And they are, because of that, and this is a pet peeve of mine, they are using both sides of their brain. Okay. Yeah. And because they're using both sides of their brain, some of the things that happen are just amazing. And it's a joy to watch, and it's a joy to mentor these students because, you know, they're very talented. I learn a lot from my students, more than, you know, well, I mean, they're the ones who do the creation.
Absolutely. And this is Amoju just chiming in. I have to support everything you guys said because I think it's very important, the diverse pathways that students come into technology fields. I happen to be lucky enough to have come into the technology field through a liberal arts education background that really trained me to think about problems critically and creatively, and then applying that to my technical expertise. So helping students to really understand that you needn't be in just one focus, that the knowledge you already have is actually can be built upon in technology. And I think that's what helps to motivate the kinds of work that I do, especially in human cognition and reasoning with respect to people in hip-hop, because they have a very unique way of thinking. And it is my belief that that kind of thinking can really help to advance some of the harder problems to solve in computer science, especially issues of semantics and deep reasoning.
That's very interesting.
Really... Go ahead, Greg.
I was just saying there was actually a chat in the NPR Blacks in Tech stream the other day talking about creativity and the role that it plays in innovation. And you know, this fits along with, you know, what everybody is saying right now, that it's not just the technical aspect of it that's going to create innovation. It's going to be the creativity and of our people that's going to actually help spur innovation as well.
And I really like that also, that piece about creativity and then the intersection of hip hop, because I think it's so important to make sure that this concept of higher education isn't just the same old story that we've been hearing, you know, over and over again. So I want you to elaborate a little bit more on sort of your experience, Amoju, and sort of why this intersection of culture, you know, with our artificial intelligence and understanding how our brains work is going to help us, you know, really move the needle regarding innovation in our community.
Okay. So if you want to just think about it from a very simplistic point of view, we all know that technology right now is not as diverse, and most technological innovation is often created by one kind of population. And that kind of population has evolved to think about the world in a certain kind of way. So the very good example I use to help people to have a deeper understanding of the role that culture plays in cognition is hip-hop lyrics. if you're a listener to any hip-hop lyrics, you'll notice that there are several words that are languages of food that we use to reason about money. So we say things like cheddar, dough, butter. But clearly we're not in hip-hop. They're not talking about food. They're talking about money. So the idea is, why is this idea of well-being tied directly to the language of food? And if you know anything about hip-hop, knowing that it came out of a low socioeconomic environment in the South Bronx, and many of their parents came out of an environment where they actually had subsidized food from the government, and they actually had government cheese. So when you think about well-being, if you've ever been hungry before in your life, you really think about well-being as a point in your life where you're no longer hungry. If you come up in a different kind of socioeconomic environment, your well-being is not tied to your daily bread. So that already shows like a diversity of thinking. And those kinds of reasoning at the conceptual level, the conceptual difference, is one of the hardest things to actually acquire. It is hard for you to force your brain to think in a way that the neuronal patterns of your brain are already set. People in hip-hop, people of African-American descent, grew up in an environment where you were forced to do code switching. So code switching is almost a form of bilingualism. And it helps your brain to actually develop in a much more dynamic way. So you're able to think in multiple dimensions at the same time. As problems get more and more complex, it requires that level of knowledge and that way of seeing the world to actually hack at the harder problems. And so it is my belief that having people from that cultural background with that kind of cultural neuronal adaptation engage in some of the harder problems of computer science will actually help us to innovate the solutions better, because their brains literally were wired to think in multiple ways at the same time.
No, I really like that. That's
point.
a really heavy point. Go ahead, Jewel. Let me let you get in.
Oh, no, I just wanted to make the comment that was a phenomenal point, because it is true when you add diversity or basically inclusive competitiveness. I mean, that's exactly what Mike was talking about at the very beginning. I mean, if you come from a different mental disposition, you're going to add a diverse perspective in terms of what you're creating. And that also speaks to just creativity in general as well.
This is Kai. I just wanted to piggyback real quick on what Emoji said before I run out of ideas with all these brilliant folks on his line. but I mean, you basically said that we're brilliant, right? And this brilliance hasn't shined through yet in the land of technology. What you're saying is we're going to bring the crossover dribble and the slam dunk into the space of technology, and that's something that I think we haven't seen yet. And to piggyback on what Mike said, and also I think other brother's name spoke before Amuju, but we haven't seen that yet. One of the things I'm trying to work on with our young people is, as it relates to creativity and innovation, is someone spoke about math. Get them into math early, not just get them into math, get them where they're comfortable with math. And the second point I want to make about creativity is one of the areas that I'm working on with our young people is helping them to foster their, we talked about different sides, the right side, the left side, creativity versus technical. But one of my areas that I'm focusing on now is imagination. In the Black community, we tend to, with our children, if we're not careful, we shut down their imagination. As soon as they become creative, when they're saying things like they're imagining their friend, or my children tell me all the time, I'm inventing this, Dad, I'm inventing this, instead of saying, that's nothing, or you didn't invent that, or there's no friend there. I try to foster that, because the imagination is where a lot of these ideas come from, and I'm sure other folks on the line can speak much better to me than I can to that. But it's just the creativity and imagination. If we don't have the confidence in that, we don't have the confidence in the math, by the fourth grade, we've already turned ourselves off in terms of where we're going with our education.
I got to jump in on that one, because I recently downloaded an application called, what is it called? Dragon something. But Yeah. So it's a game that you play on the tablet that basically teaches you algebraic concepts. And I'll make sure I tweet out the actual name of this app so people can try it out. But it was so incredible, because I'm watching my 7-year-old daughter do algebra after playing this game for 5 minutes. And
wow.
and I'm what I think it ties back to is exactly what that concept of creativity and also what Moja was saying is about sort of how you can switch your thinking to go from these different kinds of concepts and jumping around, but also something very important in that as well is that communication aspect. How do you get these ideas of what's happening in your brain and what you're seeing in your imagination? How do you get it out so that you can communicate it? And really, that's what math is, right? Math is taking your thought process and putting it on paper and explaining it and being able to show your work. And research is that same thing. How can you take this work that you've done, communicate it to a large audience, and help other people understand, right? And so I want to somehow, like, succinctly take these concepts and make sure that we're able to translate that and really just serve it out to our young people. I see a shift in how education is communicated to our young people and how we enable them to communicate their ideas back out to us.
Yes, this is Amarju. I'll piggyback off of what you just said. And I don't know if you guys know about this. There is a science rap battle. Dr. Christopher Emden at Teachers College in Columbia, he actually does work with people on science education. And there's a literal battle. And they're rapping back and forth. It's like freestyle. So it's all about science. And there's another teacher here in Oakland Unified School District, Summer Cabin, who also does the same thing. I have his links up on my webpage. And it's a rap about the founding of DNA with Rosalind Franklin and Watson and Crick. And I can tell you guys, it is so catchy. I find myself humming those lyrics every now and then. And the kids that have developed the rap and that make the video. And that's the language that they use to communicate with each other. And since they're the ones crafting it, it's easy for their peers to buy it. It's easy for the peers to engage in it. And they have a sense of ownership. It's not just my teacher giving me information. It is me and my teacher co-creating an innovative kind of knowledge in a very, very different way that we've never seen before. And I'm just very excited about that.
I want to, this kind of segues into the next question. We haven't forgotten about you, Dr. Beasley. I'm actually going to ask, I'm actually going to point this question to you because, we're talking about hip hop, and it seems that at times a lot of people can be dismissive of hip hop and the generation that listens to hip hop, right? So you actually written a book about America losing out on its young black elite. Can you talk to us? Really? Okay, great. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, yes, absolutely. I think that there's a couple issues, and as long as we're talking about different styles of learning, I just wanted to point out that right now we're really at, I think, the beginning of a revolution in education where we're empowering teachers to teach more students and teach them better than before, and empowering students to have access to what could be world-class faculty. And while it's hopefully unlikely that we'll see face-to-face interactions obliterated, technology is increasingly entering the classroom for the better and changing the traditional model of a professor standing at the front of the class lecturing to a small group of students. And I think that has the potential to be really beneficial for our black students. So it could alter the way that faculty and students interact, from lecture to discussions to testing. But we also have the potential to track teacher quality and track the way that different types of students, including different races, different students from different socioeconomic backgrounds, the way that they learn or they learn better. And there's certainly evidence that suggests that different types of students learn differently. So we really need to be effectively monitoring the way that we're teaching people and what works for them. Now, I think if we're talking specifically about engaging black students, it's important that universities are making some kind of a special effort I think, to make sure that Black students are actually included in any kind of innovations that they're making. So one of the things that I documented in my book is that you have schools like Stanford that are doing a really great job of getting white and Asian students involved in technology or in tech entrepreneurship or STEM in general. But many of the Black students at these institutions just aren't being exposed to the same types of opportunities. So just like I said, that we have to really make sure that we're doing the research to deliberately focus on developing teaching methods and strategies that are effective for our Black students. We also need to focus on getting Black students involved in organizations and extracurricular activities that prepare them for being tech entrepreneurs. And, one of the things I think that Emoju mentioned, or maybe it was someone else, but someone was talking about the importance of being able to reach out to larger communities and the importance of that. And one of the things that I found in my research is that Black students and minority students in general, or Blacks and minorities in general, are deeply concerned about their communities, and that's an excellent thing. But that can also be a hindrance if people aren't aware how they can actually help different communities. So instead, we have people that enter into a much more narrow set of fields, like teaching and social work, because they can't envision how they could actually reach out to other African Americans or other Blacks or other disadvantaged groups more effectively through something like technology. And I think that that's a really important thing that universities can and should be doing, that's showing people the ways that different types of technology and science can actually be beneficial and, can help them further their interests, not just from sort of the traditional standpoint of innovation just for the sake of innovation, but innovation for the sake of benefiting larger communities and larger groups.
Yeah, I feel that, in my heart, I feel that comment, Dr. Beasley. I wonder, Mike, since you recently were one of the spearheads for the HBCU Innovation Summit, and we were really there talking about how we can better prepare the African Americans coming out of the HBCUs for the innovation economy. But if we're really seeing a gap, though, in how, in sort of the social impact and social entrepreneurship, what can be done to help these students really leverage that cultural desire to help their community along with this innovation?
Well, what's really interesting, and this came out of the HBCU Innovation Summit in Silicon Valley at Stanford. Google was there, Facebook was there, the White House was there, Andreessen Horowitz, an iconic private equity VC firm, was there. One of the things that came out of it is that there was learning on both sides. The HBCU leadership, and I would challenge that most leadership in Black America, from the Congressional Black Caucus to our mainstream media, Black-owned media, to pastors, to teachers, educators, they simply don't know what the innovation economy is. They're disconnected from the innovation ecosystem. They can't tell you what a comprehensive economic development strategies plan is. And we have 540 districts around the country that create those 5-year plans that determine the future of those kids in those schools, and the teachers don't even know who those committees are, nor do they understand the local innovation ecosystems and who are part of it. And so our kids are not competing in this framework. Even our elite athletes who make millions of dollars come off the field and off the court and lose those millions of dollars because they don't know how to compete in the innovation economy. So when we bring the HBCU Innovation, when we created the HBCU Innovation Summit, we brought the HBCU community to Silicon Valley to immerse them in the number one hub of innovation in the world. A magical thing happened. Not only did they learn how fast-paced and how creative this environment is, but they also learned that they were doing a lot of the things that were very innovative as well. And Silicon Valley learned that as well. For example, from 1999 to 2009, a 10 years period of time at the turn of the century, the number one technology company in America was Symantec. It was run by a black man, John Thompson. He was the CEO of Symantec, grew it to a $6 billion organization, global giant. They produced Nortec, the antivirus, and they merged with another company, and it became an $11 billion franchise. And he now runs Virtual Instruments over in San Jose, and he sits on the board of Microsoft, and he is a FAMU grad, an HBCU grad, at the top of the game. When we brought those professors and presidents and provosts and deans, and we sat them down at Andreessen Horowitz, one of the top iconic VC firms on Sand Hill Road, a black man stood up there and said, you know, this place wouldn't exist if it weren't for me. Well, nobody knew who this guy was. I'm saying that.
I remember that, yes.
Here we have black innovators coming out of the HBCU community, coming out of fragmented, destroyed communities that never had the investment that we put into this innovation economy that is driving global technology around the world. We have success stories that we know nothing about. And so we're divorced not only from the innovation economy, we're divorced from our own story.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta ask. I gotta do a shameless plug on this one because this has come up so many times that there are these people out there who are like African American, versions of Wozniak, right? Where nobody really knows about them because what they've done is so technical and so kind of deep within the systems that conversation never bubbles up to the top. So what we did is we created a Wikipedia project. So it's called the Notable African Americans in Technology Wikipedia Project. So just Google that, and there's a form where you can actually submit to this database so that we can make sure that we have a single location where this information is being collected, and then it's being farmed back into Wikipedia so that we can have a central repository within that system so that we can always find these stories moving forward. But I also want to bring back in Dr. Farrow because, when we're talking about this concept of innovation, we're talking about these problems that are so close to our community, and we want to enable our students to solve them. How can we do this in our universities? And from your perspective, how can we do this? And I want to direct that to Kai also. So I want to make sure we have some time for Kai to answer that as well.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here, I'm just bubbling to get into this conversation again because I totally agree with what everybody's been saying. The best example that I can give is let's go into the black community and see what the problems are. The problems are largely, and besides poverty, are health issues that are related to poverty.
Yep. And
we can solve those problems. We understand those problems. We understand them, at their source, and these are the problems that I'm starting to work on now. I'm a physicist, but I'm now doing biology because I wanted to solve some of these problems, and these go right back to our community. And it's interesting how we've got this convergence now. It's something that I need to tell you about the Affordable Care Act that is not being voiced right now in any large extent. There's about $1 trillion of investment sitting on the sidelines waiting to take advantage of what's going to happen with the Affordable Care Act. Okay? It's waiting to be given to startup companies who have decided that they want to show innovative ways to approach health problems and to service a whole group of people who's coming into the health system that may have traditionally come through the door of the emergency room, that are now coming in, through basically the front door, through who will now have, access to a physician. And so, we're at this point right now where we need people. And, there was recently an op-ed, I think it was in the New York Times, which basically said, it's not going to be more doctors because the math is not there. You can't create enough more new doctors to handle what's going to happen, with the number of people that are coming into the system. You have to innovate in another way. You have to do a different type of healthcare delivery system, along with being able to the normal things, which is where I'm involved. We do have better ways to deal with things like diabetes and heart disease and high blood pressure, the things which are in the Black community.
And so I want to throw this one out to Kai, because you're making some really strong points, and I wonder, can problems like this be solved outside of the university? Do you have to have a research laboratory and a PhD and a master's degree and all this to start solving some of these problems with innovation? Kai, what do you think?
No, I would say that our hood is our laboratory. This is where all the action is. This is where all the problems are. This is where we're seeing the dysfunction in our communities, as everyone has said. But I want to go back to what Mike said and point it back to your question. Mike said something about the brother that's on the board at Symantec, or he was there, now he's moved on to virtual another company. And I did know about that brother. But our stories, as he said, they aren't told. Okay, so we have a lot of good stuff going on, and no one in our communities knows. They don't see other examples of Black males doing the kinds of things that we're doing. And then when they do see them, we got to make it clear to them that it's culturally valuable to them. Like, I went into a community once, and I told them, as a software developer, software engineer, I make more money than the average football player. Now, not the superstar football player, but the dude on the bench, I make more money than half for a very long time. Okay, so as someone mentioned earlier, I think it was Emoji, talked about how in hip-hop the language is about food when they want to represent money. You got to talk to our young people in terms that they understand, that has meaning to them, that is important to them, that I can say culturally relevant to them. And so when we go into these communities, we have to let them see, hey, we have Black entrepreneurs, we have Black technologists, we have Black engineers, Black physicists. The folks on this phone, for people in our community to not know about who we are is ridiculous. Okay, and we have to get into these schools. Because for me, it's a pipeline issue. We talk about college, but most of our kids aren't even getting to the point where college is an option. And so we got to correct the pipeline in education. Then we get them to education, to the college program. Then we got scaffolds around so they can be successful in a university situation. But back to the pipeline, if we don't change the mindset of our young people, that's number one. These problems are social. They're not aptitude. There's nobody in the Black community that can't do algebra, that can't do math. I did it. Everybody on the phone did it, right? You just had some encouragement. You had some direction. And that's lacking in our community right now. I walked into one school, and I held up a Kindle like 5 years ago. No one in the school knew what it was, including the teachers. Knew what a Kindle was when it first came out. I had one, I'm a tech guy, so I had one as soon as it came out. They had no idea what it was, and there were commercials for Kindles on television. And so people like the brother you mentioned, Thompson of Symantec, where's our commercial with that dude in the commercial? Where's the commercial showing us the Black innovators? We don't have that. And so we got to do it ourselves. We got to do it ourselves. And the challenge is, what I try to do is, when I hear these stories, that brother's going to hear from me. I'm be tapping these folks, hey, man, can you come and speak at this event? Can you come and do this? Can you come and do that? So that our young people can see these exemplars at the highest level and at all levels of what we're doing. And when they see that, when they say, hey, he's driving the Benz and he's a tech dude, it speaks to them. And my last point, one of the things that happened to me when I was coming through college, and I guarantee you it happened to most folks in this line, or at least a couple more, I was absolutely discouraged from pursuing my degree in computer science in undergrad. I was told I wasn't smart enough. I was told to think about a different major. And what I did instead was double majored in business and computer science and excelled in both of them and went on to have a nice career. But we have got to look out for that kind of stuff. Our kids, there's a study that came out by Bayer, I think it was in 2010. They did a study where women scientists, chemists, and minority scientists talked about how they were being discouraged while they were in college by their professors to not pursue careers. So this is a social deal, and we can solve it ourselves from the standpoint of getting more engaged, getting more involved. Last point. You mentioned the Wikipedia project that you guys are starting at BIT. Well, a lot of times I find myself speaking to the choir. Like, we're on this call, and I'll speak to you and Greg and some other folks, and we all talk in the same talk. But the people in our communities, they have no idea what we're talking about. They don't know about Wikipedia. They don't know that we got this project. They don't know about Blacks in Technology. We got to get those folks who are new, who are hungry, who don't even know what these opportunities are out here.
I got to cut you off on that one, Kai, though, because I want to hold our feet to the fire, because we don't even have enough people from our community, the people who are in the know, crowdsourcing this information so that the people who don't know can have it. So I got to hold our feet to the fire and say, no,
Absolutely.
We're not doing our job, and we got to fix that. But I also want to take it back to Dr. Beasley, because I know you got something. Give it to me.
She's got something. I mean, because if you really think about it, everything that we're talking about is really about bridging the gap between the community and the educators. And so when she, brought up the point about like educating our people and being able to reach them in order to get them inspired to really tap into what they know in order to contribute to the innovation in society. I mean, it's really important to get these leaders that are in technology in the institutional, the teaching system, and bridge the gap between what's happening out there, as well as getting people into the community, bridging the gap between them and, the education system as well.
Mm-hmm. And thank you, Jewel. And how can we support folks who are coming in? Let's say, we get students coming into the community colleges, coming into the universities, all the time. How can we get them and empower them with their sort of social, generational, cultural knowledge, and empower them to move forward and do research with their experiences along with the tools that they're learning in the schools, and not to abandon those experiences and just sort of adopt this mainstream norm? How can we do that? What can we do?
Well, that really needs to be prioritized by universities, and unfortunately it isn't at this point, or at least not by predominantly white institutions. So it's part of their responsibility. They should be reaching out to all their students, but we just don't have the focus there at this point. And I blame some of it on basic social science research and lack of interest in it. But this is something that should be very clearly problematized, and I think we tend to be so focused on people that are underachieving at lower levels that we don't pay a lot of attention to the Black students that are already there, that are very capable and bright and ready to do the work, but that needs some extra encouragement. So the small amount of research that's out there suggests that we need to make sure that what we're offering to students isn't remedial, that instead what we're offering students is challenging. So we tell them that we expect that they're going to do well, that we know that they can do well, that they need to do well, and in fact that they should be in more rigorous programs. And I think, unfortunately, we often fall short. We either discourage students, and by actively discouraging them, or we simply don't encourage them and don't look out. So there's a number of institutional practices in place that tend to discourage students from participating in certain types of disciplines, STEM disciplines in particular. And I think that those are things that just don't get caught, they don't get monitored, and people that are responsible for it aren't penalized for it. So there's no penalty to a faculty member for discouraging a Black student from pursuing a STEM major. Nothing is going to happen to them. There's no way, we don't monitor it now. We don't care about it right now. And I think that in itself is an enormous problem. But I think also not reaching out to Black communities on campus that may be segregated from the rest of the campus is a major shortfall, and it's something that could easily be corrected. It doesn't take a lot of money. It doesn't take a lot of innovation to do. It just means that, universities need to be more proactive about making sure that all of their students are getting involved in things.
And I'm going to say that because I don't wait for other organizations to take the lead on things. I think that we always have to take the lead on things. And I watched the documentary about Angela Davis earlier this year with my mom and my sisters, and learning about that story and other stories about how Black studies, for example, got introduced into the university. People had to fight for that. Right? And I think that we're at a stage right now where we're going to have to start fighting for getting proper social education and social innovation education into our curriculum as well at the universities to say, you know what, innovation is not just enterprise business. Innovation is human. And we're going to have to lead that charge.
And we're going to.
Can I offer something with regard to where our kids are dropping out? I started this organization called Saving America's Black Boys. I launched it at South by Southwest Education Conference this year. They've invited me back next year because of the success of that presentation. And one of the things that we addressed was not the Black boys themselves. I don't believe Black boys can save themselves. It is the parents, the teachers, the leaders, the influencers, the celebrities, the athletes, the business owners. It is the panorama of pastors and all of us who have influence and upon these children, and whose responsibility it is to build an ecosystem in which they can thrive, and then prepare them and equip them to compete in that ecosystem. We're not doing that. And we live in a capitalist society. These kids have to compete. They have to have a STEM education, or STEAM, if you add in the arts, because it's creative, and I believe in that. Mm-hmm. But science, technology, engineering, math, arts is the entry point to a tech-based, high-wage workforce. It is also the entry point to a tech-driven, high-growth entrepreneurial landscape. Those are the two places where they need to be able to compete. And if they're not able to compete in those two places, they're relegated as second-class citizens to a service sector society that undermines their ingenuity and presents them a landscape of hopelessness. Certainly they're not developing generational wealth. And when they drop out of these high poverty schools where they're not learning much anyway, when they drop out of those schools, what do? They become entrepreneurs. And we have prisons filled with entrepreneurs that if we had better equipped these kids, they would be competing with the best entrepreneurs on the planet.
Amen.
Yeah, that's powerful. I'd like to pose a question. I'm sorry, Greg. I got to pop this in there because I really agree with your point. And so in February, from February 7th to February 9th, there's a startup weekend BMA Black Male Achievement happening. And we're really taking that exact concept and saying we're going to take these young boys under 18, we're going to sponsor them, allow them to participate entirely free, feed them the whole weekend, give them healthy food, and guess what? All of these adults who are participating in this startup weekend, who are from Google, who are from all these amazing companies, they're going to be their mentors for this weekend, and we're going to see what ideas these folks come up with in, 48 hours, 54 hours, right? And we're going to really give them the tools. We're going to say, hey, here is the lean startup methodology. Here's how you develop a business model. Here's how you interview your customers. Here's how you prove, that this is valuable to your customers. And here's how you go out and capture that information so that you can use it to get investment moving forward. So for folks who are interested in that event, you go online, is swbma.eventbrite.com. Get your tickets. I'm not advertising it. I just really want people to participate, and because this is a part of an ongoing dialogue that's really going to, I believe, be world changing. Go ahead, Greg. Thanks, Heather. I just wanted to pose a question about the difference in what type of education you can get from as far as STEM goes between the university and non-traditional vocational education. I want to pose this to Kai. What can you get from a university regarding STEM that you cannot get from a non-traditional vocational education?
Well, first, I'll say that they were all fine. I mean, I actually went university route, and back when I did, that was the only route you could go. Especially being a brother coming up in '86 when I graduated, trying to get a job, got the degree in that field was just unheard of. And I was feared into making sure that I had a good university education. Having said that, of course, when I got into the industry, I worked right next to many people of a different hue who had high school educations, who didn't have high school educations, who had GEDs, and who were working as software engineers making more money than me. So, as I said back then, that was the only route for me. Now there are all kinds of other routes, certification routes, online learning, vocational schools, some of these sites that teach development as far as technology and software programming. Not that that's the only area of STEM, but that's my experience. And there are many ways to do it. Now, what I do think the university offers you over a traditional vocational career or vocational education is more of a foundation. I found that, and some of my nephews have gone through some of these programs and other people that I've mentored, a lot of the information they get in vocational schools is very practical. It's very hands-on. It's very work-oriented, and they don't get as much of the theory. And that serves folks in certain levels of technology, certain levels of software development. But as you move up, and as you get more abstract thinking and more number theory and more numerical calculus and those kinds of things that lead you to some of the more challenging software problems, you don't really get that. At least back when I was coming through, you didn't get that in a vocational setting. But they both are fine. At this point, many of our young people aren't even going to the vocational schools. So I wouldn't shun anyone from pursuing a path that was vocational over a traditional university setting at all. And then I would show them where the shortcomings were and augment their learning by giving them different avenues of learning that they didn't cover in the more hands-on traditional vocational setting.
Yeah, I need to comment on this also because one of the things that I think you should also point out, in terms of the differences, is that the university is supposed to teach a student about the world along with whatever specific discipline that they're trying to study. And besides, I have my own stick, which is doing research. And certainly, if you have the idea that you're going to do research, you need to be at a university to get started in that. But I believe that what a university does is it teaches people, if they take it seriously, it teaches them about the world. And knowing about the world will eventually lead to a whole different type of creativity. Okay. Having said that, though, I totally agree about what's going on at the vocational schools is extremely important for what we have to do to bring people into this economy. You can't not do it. There is no, as far as I can see, the non-skilled workforce is dwindling faster than anything else in this country. And as I said before, a manufacturing job now is a high-tech job. And so I believe that everybody needs to get an education, and there are differences, but I agree totally. Everybody needs to get an education. This is war.
Yeah. One other point on that, I work with many people who may have gotten a university education, to your point about a more well-rounded education about the world. They may get a liberal arts degree, get a degree in language, get a degree in sociology, and then they come out of the university setting and go get programming training to get a job that pays them.
Yeah.
So they could do both.
And more to that point, I've seen quite a few programs, quite a few boot camps, as you may, pop up as far as these programming boot camps that will, they'll let the participant pay, $10,000 or something like that, and they put them through this programming boot camp for, 12 weeks or 6 months or something like that, so that they can come out and get programming jobs, and some of them actually guarantee that you will be placed at jobs as well. So that's why I kind of wanted to pose that question to you all.
And I think all the routes are fine. To agree with what the gentleman said, and also you, I think all the routes are fine. But back to what I was saying earlier, I really believe is that our K through 12, and Mike was talking about this earlier, our K through 12, and the way that our young boys, particularly, are coming up through K through 12. By the fourth grade, and a lot of times they've already been marked, labeled as they can't learn, they're not going to master math. And if you haven't been introduced to, and in my opinion, mastered, algebra, which is not very sophisticated math, mastered algebra by eighth grade with the scientists on the line, the physicists. By eighth grade, you're not really positioned to go up and do high school math and then go into college doing the higher math. Would you agree with that?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. But I have to tell you, one of the innovations that's happening. We're talking about innovations in education. I mean, I don't teach at the top tier university. We're not a finishing school. What we do at NJIT is transformational. We accept many students with all backgrounds, and our job is to get them up to a level where they can compete. And so that is one of the innovations which has been happening, which was brought up earlier, is that, this is something that we have to do. We have to take students where they are. Mm-hmm. If they come in the door, we have to take them where they are. And, we're not babysitting. Yeah. They're adults.
I agree wholeheartedly because there's a really key issue that arises when you talk about math and you start to associate these levels with that concept of math, because you can be learning, algebra in college, and but when you phrase it and you say this is not college grade math, well, what you've done is you've really destroyed a person's capabilities to really proceed with confidence about what they're doing and where they are. Of course, the goal is to get them to move forward, but I think we really do need to be more cognizant of how we categorize people and information, because the goal is to get people to move forward, not to tell people that they're too far behind.
Oh, I have 2 quick questions. Agree with that.
I have 2 quick questions for everybody on the line. They're related. I'll just say them both very quickly, and you all can respond. And I'm very interested in your responses. The first question is, do you believe that our students who are graduating from high school and college will be able to depend upon a 30-year career in a particular discipline or related channel of discipline, of that same discipline, knowledge, skill, and abilities? Can they depend upon a 30-year career in that direction? That's the first question. And secondly, can we depend upon the next 30 years moving in the same direction and having the same having an income stream from the same source? And I'll listen to your answers.
I'll take that one because I've been thinking about this. Thank you for asking the question. This is Ayori.
Okay.
This is Ayori. I think that this concept of jobs and careers is really a broken concept, right? And really what we're talking about is people's skills and creativity and ability to apply their skills to do something. When we have these very highly specialized areas that we've developed ourselves in, we farm ourselves to be disrupted. We put ourselves in a situation where when the technology trend changes, we're out of position. So there are people who have been working in technology, and when cloud computing came in, they got moved aside entirely, and they could not adjust. They couldn't pivot. They couldn't make the switch. And so, no, I don't think there are going to be careers where you're going to go out there and it's going to last for 30 years. No, because I think what we really do need to be doing is developing people to understand that they need to be leading it. And there are going to be workers and people who are just going to follow on and maybe go that vocational route and everything, and that's fine. But there's a certain tipping point that we have to be pushing people toward. And not everyone's going to get there, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we have to really make that clear of where that tipping point is that they need to shoot for.
I'll say it like this. My career has lasted 30 years. It has. But to Mike's question, the reason why it has is because I'm not doing the same thing I was doing when I started 30 years ago. And I'm a philosopher. I believe in lifelong learning. And that's one thing that was ingrained in me when I started my computer science degree, because it's a changing field. It's the language that I learned in college is not the language that I write in now. Now, had I just held on to that language, I would have got a job a long time ago. So if you instill the philosophy of you got to be constantly learning, you got to be constantly keeping up and constantly evolving, you'll be fine.
Yeah, you have to be flexible and you have to be adaptable.
Yeah.
I think that's a skill that we can actually teach people to learn with technology.
Yeah, I think what I'm trying to teach my students to be is problem solvers, and I think that's why, again, a diverse education, I think, makes it more likely that you'll be able to be put in a situation where you have to solve a problem and you're able to think through a problem. And,
yeah, that's why I'm so high on math. So that's where I think I got that from, was early on with math. And so that's why I'm so high on math.
Well, I agree.
Yeah, because it took analytical skill sets. And once you have a foundation of being able to think analytically, I really think that you can put pieces together, even if the pieces change and diversify over time.
Would it be fair to say that it is the responsibility of the education pipeline to produce American innovators?
Well, I'll say it like this. Was that Mike again?
Yes.
I hope it's like this, and then I'm gonna bow out because I want to hear from some other people. But you got me excited now. What I would say to that, Mike, is it's up to the community. You show me, back to your ecosystem terminology, bad schools are not, that's a bad choice of word, if you know what I'm saying. Schools that aren't performing up to their expectations are in the neighborhoods that match the school. It's rare that I go into a community that looks a certain way, has a certain vibration to it, and the school is not good. And so I think that the school is a product of the environment and the community. So if you can change the environment and the community, whether it be the parents, the churches, all what you said earlier, you create that ecosystem, you'll have a good school. You'll have people in the community that demand the performance of the school, and then the school will respond accordingly. That's, I have friends who are in education, and I'm always comparing my daughter's school to the inner city experience, and it's amazing. It is amazing the difference, and parents demand that. If we can't even get by in our neighborhood, I can't even litter on the school campus at my daughter's school. I'll be arrested. But then I go into the inner city, and I go to one of my friends' schools that he's a principal of, and the level, the lethargy, and the apathy, and those kinds of things. Not all schools, of course, but most of the time, that's what I see. And I think that, and I've talked to some folks about starting an initiative with the parents. Some of these parents need to be educated.
Yeah.
They are unable to do what we're requiring them to do.
Some of the parents, all the parents. I think it starts at home. I think it's really a mixture of home and also what your education system. But it all starts at home.
I just wanted to say, I don't think it's fair to put that all on the education system. That's kind of what I was trying to say.
Well, I think that's really interesting that you say that, right? So because we go between whenever we have the conversation about how to solve the problem is always placed at home. The problem is with the parents. The problem is in the home. And then they say, well, the solution is to give more funding to education and to allow the education to do this or to do that. And that doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't add up. So the problem and the solution lies in both areas, and there needs to be a shared responsibility there. And so
exactly.
That's what I was trying to say.
Well, I mean, you haven't said it yet, but it's a general solution to the problem of poverty, and it's the one innovation that I think will be the one I'm looking forward to coming out of our community. Since it hasn't been solved for us, we will probably have to solve it ourselves.
Yeah, and I really like what Bill Gates recently released a paper talking about this, where he was criticizing Mark Zuckerberg for saying that he wanted to give, internet to the rest of the 6 billion people around the globe. Bill Gates said, these people don't need internet. These people need poverty alleviation. These people need sanitation. These people need, these basic human services that haven't been provided yet. And so we need to be looking to our technology to be able to solve these great problems. And we have problems related to poverty here. And this is this conversation about African Americans in tech. That's really that's really at the center and the core of this. I don't think we talk about that enough. We talk a lot about, creating new businesses and things like that. And certainly I think economy is a part of that solution, but it is not the solution.
Right. But if these companies had a diversified leadership team, they would know that. Like if, Facebook really had, leaders at the top that were diverse, that came from different types of communities, but also obviously they meet the requirements that it takes to be part of that institution. I mean, him saying, well, I'm going to give, internet to all these people. I mean, that message would have been crafted just a little bit different. Yeah. But if you don't include people in your leadership team, it starts at the root of the foundation, you're not going to know that what you're saying is completely out of the ballpark. It's not something that really is necessary. It's just it's a comment that is really ignorant in one sense, just because there's not that diversification that's there. There's not that inclusive competitiveness in the leadership teams of these organizations that are implementing these solutions.
So we're missing the diversity at the decision-making level in these large companies. We're missing the diversity in the research institutions where the problems are being initially solved. We're missing the diversity in the economy where the businesses are emerging. So we're missing it in all these areas. But I know that there are good people out there who are working to, remediate, and address those issues across all those areas. And Umoju, we haven't heard from you in a while. And I know that you're so close to this, and you're so close to innovation, and I also want to start wrapping up the call. So let me open it up for closing remarks, starting with you, Umoju.
Did she drop off the call?
Did we lose you? Oh, okay. I think we might have lost Umoju.
Okay. Sorry, I did. This is Umoju. Sorry, people. This is Umoju. I wanted to say that, first of all parents who are in poor performing schools are not negligent. Sometimes there's just a big gap between solutions and the problem. And being over here at UC Berkeley, being in Silicon Valley, I will say that there is a culture that is not as inclusive, but it's not because there isn't a desire to bring in inclusion and diversity. You have to think of yourself as a soldier. That's how I think of myself. I think of myself as a civil rights activist. Because the work that I do, I position it in that kind of way. Computer science is one of the only things that I know that you can do legally and take yourself within 12 months from poverty to being strongly in the middle class. You can go to a coding school or something and earn this skill and actually get a job that will support your family. So when we have that kind of understanding, we that are inside the inner circle, we have to be extremely vocal about our stance. And we have to be very, very bold, and we have to be very, very brave. It's not always going to be easy, but you just have to keep on driving and grinding at it. When I was starting my research project, I was lucky to be at Berkeley, but even at Berkeley, a lot of people just looked at me like I was crazy because they just didn't understand. So you can't expect affirmation. You have to learn to be a trailblazer and go it alone. So I would end this whole segment by saying that we have to continuously persist and find ways to encourage ourselves. As long as you know that you're doing the right thing, continue pushing forward and doing it. Because innovation, if you're going to be innovative, that means you're going to be a trailblazer. If you're going to be a trailblazer, there is no framework outlined for you to take. You have to be the one to build the framework. It can be extremely lonely, but it's extremely rewarding. And we just have to do whatever we take to put the message out there. If you're going to be on Twitter, on Facebook, whatever it is, just let people know that you actually exist so that you can be a beacon.
Thank you. That's powerful. How about you, Dr. Reggie? Closing remarks.
You know, what I'm thinking of as I'm listening to the conversation is that this should be a very personal thing for everyone. You know, when I was at a majority institution trying to study physics, a black person got a job in the physics department as a professor. And I walked in his office and said hello and told him I was studying physics. And before he even knew my name, he said, as long as you're at the university, I guarantee you'll have a summer job in physics. And he was my mentor. His name is Dr. Earl Shaw. And he was my mentor. And I took that lesson and tried to take it, you know, on as I do physics, is that when I see people, you know, I take people in because I think, as most of us already know, it's the mentors that bring people up through the system and, you know, allow them to carry on that same tradition. So you know, this has to be personal. This has to be something you do one-on-one if it's going to work, I think.
I appreciate that.
Excellent. What about you, Kai? Closing remarks?
Not really. I'm going to echo what both of them said, the mentorship, something that I do very actively, and what Dr. Miller said about civil rights activist aspect of this. I agree with that 100%. That's exactly how I look at it. I look at this as a civil rights issue of our time because we are free from political constraint. We are free. We can vote. We have all these rights and privileges, but we still have not tapped into the economic engine of this country as a people. That's why we're in poverty. We have not, and folks are coming over here, you know, generations after us and setting up businesses in our community. We can't put a candy shop on the corner in an area that's 95% populated with black people. I'm going to say this and I'm going to leave it at this. I took my son to get a haircut 2 weeks ago, his first haircut, and I live in Houston, Texas. You don't get much blacker than that. I live in Houston, Texas. I took him to the barbershop. We walked up. I saw all the signs on the front of the barbershop, the face, the different kind of hairstyles, all the black language, everything I would recognize as a traditional black barbershop. I walked in. You know who was cutting hair? Asian people. I said, what the? I walked back out, looked again, came back in, and brothers ended up getting their haircut. Okay, and so we have not figured out yet how to, by and large, as a people, tap into the economic engine of this country. We never have, really. But at this point in time, in 2013, the way you tap into that is through technology. It's through STEM, as Micah so eloquently said. It's through STEM. So if we don't embrace STEM, we're going to be left out of tapping into this engine, and we must do that. We simply must. We cannot go forward with this generation not being equipped to tackle and tap into the economic engine of the United States of America.
I have to agree. How about you, Mike Green? Do you have any closing remarks?
Well, I appreciate everything that everyone said, and I grew up in Houston, so I know that very well.
So you got your hair cut at the Asian barbershop?
Can you believe that? Anyway.
I haven't done that, but I do know Houston, and I love it. I haven't been there in a while. I hope to get back. Now, what I think, I mean, you're so eloquent, all of you, in exactly what you're saying. The American dream is really generational wealth. We all want to acquire wealth and leave it on to our children and leave a better place for them than we had for ourselves. Acquiring generational wealth, managing it, leaving it to our children, that requires that we compete in a capitalist society. And wealth in this country is typically generated through entrepreneurship. And so when I hear college to career, which is great, everybody's not going to be an entrepreneur. We all want to have jobs that bring in livable wages and so on and so forth. But that can't be our only mantra. We have to be job creators, wealth creators, and we have to reinvest in ourselves, reinvest in other entrepreneurs, reinvest in the infrastructure that provides resources and channels by which we can develop more entrepreneurs, because we have tons of innovators. But poverty breeds innovation. So we have lots of innovators. And we lead the nation in the growth rate of entrepreneurship at 60%, which is triple the national rate at 18%. And yet, we produce less than 1% GDP, and that's the best we've ever done since slavery. We cannot continue along this trajectory. So creating generational wealth requires that we compete in a capitalist society, understanding the economic narrative, understanding the big picture, understanding that STEM education is the entry point to both the high-wage workforce and both the high-growth entrepreneurship landscape. And we have to be willing to make those sacrifices to teach ourselves as lifelong learners and create a nation of innovators that, like Kai, is going to learn to adapt over and over and over, because they're lifelong learners. They're recognizing opportunity. They're creating opportunity. And they're reaching down and across the aisle, and they're helping others. And because when you create that success for others, you create success for yourself. And I think that if we, as Black people, with a shared experience and understanding, can change our economic narrative and outlook and teach our children to do the same, I think we can lift one another up. And we can compete, and we can succeed. And the nation needs us, because guess what? We are the fastest growing entrepreneurs out there. They need us. That's it.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike. And last but not least, Dr. Beasley.
Oh, well, I think we have a real opportunity at this point to learn from technology how to better teach our students. So I hope that those of us that are educators will really push for this revolution in education to work for Black students at this point, rather than just sort of going with the status quo of seeing how it works for the general mainstream population, which tends to leave out Black students. But I also want to point out that all of the problems that are facing the Black community and Black students that we've been talking about during the second half of the show are things that I think we can use as incentive to get our Black students more involved in technological education and in innovation. We need to be able to show them that these problems plaguing Black communities are ones that could be solved, at least in part, through technology, but it takes a more diverse workforce than what we have today. So we need to show them that they can make a big difference for themselves and others.
Excellent. I definitely want to thank each and every one of you for coming on the Bit Tech Talks.
We forgot about Jewel.
I'm sorry?
We forgot about Jewel.
Oh, yeah, Jewel. I'm sorry, Jewel. Go ahead.
I just think that, the contribution that each and every one of you made today, I just want to thank you for that, because I think each and every one of your perspectives it's very pertinent, and I think it was broad and it was diverse, and that's a great thing. So I just want to thank everybody for participating.
Thank you, Jill.
Excellent. And again, I want to thank all of our guests for joining us tonight on the Bit Tech Talks, and wish you everyone well in the future and much success.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Take care.
Blacks in Technology.
Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology.